What up, fam? I am Dr. De Luna, and you are listening to Drop It Like It's Doc podcast. Today, we're going to be talking all about how to boost your brain. No, we are not going to be talking about any fancy supplement, anything that you need to do that is outside of you. A lot of these things are within you and things that you just need to integrate in. So if you're working on brain health as far as, depression, anxiety, but also just trying to increase focus and concentration, this episode is for you. So fam, I think that we like to make things quite complicated when we look at any aspect of health, but your brain, this little walnut up there, just needs a few things to thrive. First, it needs blood flow. Second, it needs ATP, aka energy. And third, it needs to be activated. You have to ask it to do different things. So we're gonna walk through some of those things so that you can dip your toe into different aspects of your life, your physiology that might be impacting the way that your brain is functioning. So first is blood flow. First of all, you're probably not moving your body. Just kidding. I hope you're moving your body. But if you are not moving your body, and if you are not getting your heart rate up and getting your blood pumping through your veins and arteries, your brain is not going to get the oxygen that it needs. And you can tell if your brain is not getting the oxygen that it needs by your little fingers and your little toes and your nose. Are they cold all the time? They might be. Also, let me just say, if you haven't listened to my episode about dong dilemmas and jam, there's some golden nugs in there about blood flow, because if you have erectile dysfunction, or even if you notice that your erections are just not as powerful as they used to be, that's a sign of suboptimal blood flow, because there's so many little veins in your peenie that are helping to engorge that space so that you have, a boner. So if that's not happening for you, first of all, just know that that's a sign that you have suboptimal blood flow. But even if you don't have a peenie, and if you don't know if you get boners or not, what you can tell if you are not having enough blood flow is that your hands and your feet might be cold all the time, or your nose might be cold all the time. And maybe you don't recognize it, but you go to hug someone and they're like, your hands are cold. Or you go to snuggle with your babe in bed and they're like, please get your fucking feet away from me because they are icicles. Trust, if that is the case, that this is also an extremity, your head, so it's not getting that much blood flow to it. So if that's the case, everything's just going to slow down. But there's many causes for this, right? First of all, you might have an issue with blood pressure. High blood pressure is, of course, not good, right, fam? But high blood pressure, it actually causes so much pressure in these little microvascular units of our body that it can cause damage. So that is something that if you have high blood pressure, you need to work on that, okay? And there's so many things that you could do to work on that. We'll actually do an episode on this. I think that'll be good for you. But low blood pressure is something that I see all the time. I can get low blood pressure. If you are someone that goes from sitting to standing and gets dizzy, that's your blood pressure, babe. And if that's the reason why you get dizzy and the reason why you feel like you're about to black out, is truly because there's not enough blood feeding your brain and you're just feeling that effect. And what makes you feel better? Sitting down, usually, right? Or you collapse to the ground. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But that's truly a sign that your blood pressure is way too low to feed your sweet little brain. That could be from simply dehydration, honestly. That could be, a lot of the times it's from your adrenals. I see that a lot in my practice. Adrenal fatigue and also just hormone imbalances that are influencing the way that your blood is flowing through your body. So you need to make sure that that is not going on with you. And again, there's so many tools that you can do to manage blood pressure, to work on your sweet little adrenal glands. But another thing that I need you to be aware of is if your brain is not getting blood flow because you're anemic. If you have ever been diagnosed with anemia and you did nothing about it, you're still anemic. And then if you're wondering why you're anxious, depressed, why your brain isn't firing the way that you want it to, it's truly because your brain does not have oxygen to it, because that's what anemia is. Anemia is when your red blood cells are a different size and shape, or if your hemoglobin is low and your red blood cell count is low, and your red blood cells are what are carrying oxygen to your brain. So if your brain doesn't have enough of that just basic tool to deliver it the fuel that it needs, everything's going to slow down in your brain. And as someone that has been anemic before, I can say that not being anemic feels much better. And you can become anemic from iron. So if you're low in iron, just based on your diet, but also if you're having absorption issues in your gut. Also, those of you that have really heavy periods, those of you that have hemorrhoids. I actually have a male patient who his ferritin and iron are so low, and I couldn't figure out why. He's not menstruating. He did not have an internal bleed based on, certain tests and whatnot. He had fucking hemorrhoids that he didn't want to tell me about, because who wants to talk about their bleeding butthole with their doctor? I hope you do, because your doctor needs to know everything about you. So if you have hemorrhoids that are bleeding, know that that's blood loss that you're losing every single day. So outside of menstruation, if you menstruate or not, that's something that you need to be aware of. Even people that get like bloody noses all the time. Or another fun clinical pearl fact for you is that if you're someone that drinks nonstop black tea actually makes it so that you can't absorb your iron. So I actually know a lot of people that drink black tea all day and their iron is very low, and you could truly shift yourself into anemia. Know that I'm a big fan of tea, but it's my job to educate you that if you're like, this isn't making sense to me, I'm not bleeding, I eat red meat every day, why is my iron so low? Could be the gallons of black tea that you're drinking. Other reasons that you could become anemic are from B vitamins, predominantly vitamin B9 and B12. Those are B vitamins that are abundant in the diet, but it depends on what you're eating. So if you don't eat a balanced diet, if you don't eat animal protein, your brain is not going to have those B vitamins via the red blood cells to deliver oxygen to your brain. So that's a big piece on blood flow as well. So next will be just overall helping your brain make energy, ATP. So, you might remember back to chemistry class in high school, which you probably were not paying attention to at all, but you might remember that in the cell, your body is making ATP, which is how your cells create energy. ATP is the energy of the body, and it's just this little compound, really, and that whole process requires oxygen. So everything that I just said about anemia and blood flow, that absolutely plays into if your body will have that aspect to be able to make the energy at all. And also with that being said, there's so many things that are influencing just the way that your brain is active and the way that your body is creating these different vitamins and minerals and nutrients that are then feeding the blood to go to your brain. So if you're not breathing, that would be silly for me to tell you that you're anemic and that's why your brain is not getting the oxygen it needs. If you are holding your breath, you will not get the oxygen that your brain needs. And a fun fact is that if you're someone that just yawns all the time, or if you feel like you're out of breath all the time, that's telling me that you have suboptimal oxygen saturation in your body, because the way that you yawn is actually telling your body to take in more oxygen, and it changes the chemical balance of your cells and of your blood to help feed your brain more oxygen. So if you are yawning, listening to this podcast, it's not me because I'm entertaining as fuck. It's literally because you're probably not breathing. And when we're stressed, a lot of times we hold our breath. So I wanted to touch on that too. Almost forgot to tell you about breathing. We love breathing, and we're not breathing with our chest. We're breathing with our belly, with our diaphragm. That actually shifts us into the parasympathetic state, and it helps our body feel safe. When we breathe into the chest, it tells our body that we are not safe, that there's a threat, that there's something that we need to, go after and be on guard about. And your brain's not gonna work well if it feels like it has to be on guard, if it doesn't feel safe. That's ultimately what low oxygen is doing, regardless of the underlying cause. So we're back inside the cell. Your cell needs that oxygen. It's actually the last thing to accept electrons down the electron transport chain. Wow, what a throwback for you. But you also need so many minerals in there. You need so many vitamins. So your cells, in order to make ATP, they need to be nourished, they need to be happy, and they need to feel safe. You know what really targets our cells? Toxins. Of course, I had to say the word toxin on here. There's no way I could not. Heavy metals also really influence the way that our cells make energy. But, even outside of the things that can make them suboptimal, so many of you are not eating real food. So many of you are not getting the vitamins and minerals that you need. So many of you think that just drinking a greens powder once a day is going to give you all the micronutrients that you need. I am so sorry, honey bunny. It is not. It is not at all. Your cells will also not make adequate ATP if you have a metabolic imbalance. So if you have things like insulin resistance or spikes and drops in blood sugar, or, different types of issues with cholesterol and fatty acid metabolism, that can make it so that you don't get as much fuel via your cells to every other aspect of your body. So nutrition is key. Blood sugar and the brain, that you can't separate them. If you have an imbalanced blood sugar, you will have an unhealthy brain. And low blood sugar will trigger your brain to go into freak out mode, similar to the low oxygen state. But high blood sugar will actually trigger something called It's called advanced glycosylated end products, which is essentially where sugar that is excess floating around your blood then binds to different proteins and can actually bind to different structures in your brain and all over your body. But this is a brain boosting lecture today. So that could make it so that there's just a lot of inflammation. Things are not firing well. So you really need to take your blood sugar seriously. And if you are someone that gets exhausted and then eats and feels better, you have low blood sugar. If you are someone that eats and then feels exhausted after, like you could take a nap, no, it's not the turkey. That's your blood sugar, honey. That's a sign. Your energy should not go up or down based on what you eat. Okay, so that's some ATP stuff. Your body needs truly so many micronutrients. It needs to feel safe, and also that cell needs to have all the building blocks that it needs to be able to make that energy. Without energy, the neurons in your brain, which are the cells that are creating the structure of your brain that are firing throughout your entire body, they can't do their job. Your brain has so many mitochondria in it, and mitochondria are what are producing ATP. So that is a place that you will see those shifts. If you're having mitochondrial issues, that's a place that you can definitely see cognitive changes, fatigue. Also, know that the earliest signs of changes in brain health are things like brain fog, fatigue, and depression. How many of us have had one of those things, right? So those are signs that your body wants something. And on this podcast, we talk a lot about mental health. We talk a lot about depression. Of course, there's so many root causes to it, but it could truly be that your brain just doesn't have the building blocks that needs to make ATP, or there's inflammation, or there's not oxygen going to it. Quite a few things can be going on there. So outside of the ATP, now we're on activation. Fam, if you do the same things every day, you are not asking your brain to lay down new connections. So our brain likes a challenge, similar to remember the first time you drove a car? I do. I learned on a manual, which I love manuals. Like, why don't cars come in manuals anymore? Isn't that weird? So anyway, if you've never driven a manual car, it's way harder because now your left foot's pressing on something, your right foot's doing it, your hand's changing the gears. There's people driving around. I grew up in upstate New York, so there's like deers jumping across the street, birds flying everywhere, people yelling at you. It's a lot. So the first time that I did that, it was very overwhelming. And it's because my brain was trying to integrate all this information, trying to, show up to that situation. But the more that you do something, the easier it becomes. So now you don't have to think twice about it, right? Well, I hope that you're conscious while you're driving, but it doesn't take that same emotional and energetic input because it is almost a habit now. And the brain, I think that we like to do things that feel easy. That's essentially what habits are. Habits are things that we've done so many times that the brain lays down pathways that makes it easier to go down that path versus a new skill. Your brain has to extend out new pathways, and it does that via something called neuroplasticity, in which your neurons, with activation, blood flow, and ATP, they sprout. They sprout and create new proteins to lay down new tracks for new pathways to run. That requires a substantial amount of energy, and it doesn't feel easy because, again, it's not a habit yet. It's something that you're asking your body to do. It's almost like athletically when you try to do something, and I'm a yoga instructor, I'm a yoga student, and I remember the first time that I even tried to do something like a chaturanga or like an arm balance, I fell out so many times. It was so hard, and I would feel my muscles, shaking to try to show up for me. But now my body's like, oh, this is how we move. This is a pathway that is well established. We're gonna go down that road. So please don't do things the same every day. Don't do the things that are easy for you. I mean, you can keep doing them, but you need to challenge yourself. That is one of the key pillars of neurological health, of brain health, and also cognition, because I'm a really big fan of maintaining mental health throughout the entire life. And to be honest, we are not showing up for our elderly the way that we should. And we oftentimes just stick them into nursing homes in which they have no social interaction. They have no stimulation at all. They do the same thing every day, and usually they decay quite fast because our brain likes a challenge. Our brain likes to play. Our brain likes to interact. So being social matters. Showing up to things matters. Trying new games and skills and projects. Doing something that's hard for you. Even, if you're right-handed, do stuff with your left hand. If you're right dominant and usually step with your right foot first, step with your left. Brush your teeth with your left hand. Turn light switches on and off with your left hand. Do whatever you want. And if you're lefty, obviously it'd be opposite right? That's just one example of trying something new to activate your brain. You can activate your brain in so many ways, fam. truly. We have so much input that is pouring into this brain all the time. So it could be movement, it could be different sounds, it could be different activities, it could be different visual stimuli, it could be anything that you've always wanted to try and told yourself, I'm not good at it, I don't want to do it. That's because you haven't tried it yet, and it's not a habit yet, and those pathways have not been laid down. So I invite you to challenge yourself a little bit, to give your brain a little push up, if you will. So those 3 are just foundational pillars for brain health. If you are not getting oxygen to your brain, if your cells cannot make energy, and if you're not activating your brain, please don't listen to the rest of this podcast because none of it is going to matter to you. So those are where you need to start. But let's go a little bit deeper. So the brain is very sensitive to inflammation, rightfully so. Your brain has something around it called the blood-brain barrier, and a lot of our bodies has these boundary systems that is very selective, allowing certain things in, certain things out. And your sweet little brain is so precious. So it has a very specific barrier around it that does not let big molecules in. So a lot of compounds that people take and they think it's gonna boost brain health or go to the brain, it doesn't. It's way too big. It's not going in there. But a lot of the things that we consume, they actually go into our gut. They metabolize into forms that can easily cross the blood-brain barrier. So this is actually common with things like flavonoids from different foods. The flavonoids themselves aren't necessarily activating anti-inflammatory pathways in the body. It's only when the gut bacteria metabolize them that then they could do their job. So I'm bringing this up because a lot of your guts are not happy. They're not happy at all. And if you're like, how do I know if my gut is not happy? Are you bloated? Are you constipated? Do you have diarrhea? Do you have adverse food reactions? Do you fart all the time? Do you burp all the time? You know, just anything like that. Do you get heartburn? If you have symptoms in your gut, that is your gut telling you that it is not that stoked at the moment. And if you want info on your gut, please know that this podcast, gut health is one of my favorite things to talk about. So there's so much information on here. The What's in Your Guts episode might be one of the best episodes I've actually ever recorded. So please go back and listen to that if you're working on gut health. But the gut is actually directly connected to the brain via cranial nerve 10. It's called the vagus nerve. And this is a place where actually microbes travel along. So much research has come out about the vagus. So microbes can travel along it, but also not even anti-inflammatory. Yes, they can. Inflammatory compounds in your gut can, of course, go systemic, circulate everywhere, but they can truly crawl along this little nerve and go into your brain. So that is why for some people, like myself, that don't react well to gluten, if my gut becomes glutened, if I get cross-contaminated because my server tells me that something is gluten-free, but they're just fucking stupid, and now I've been glutened, sorry, I have a vendetta against a certain restaurant at the moment. What happens is that inflammation from the gut that spreads into the brain. So for me, when I eat something that I know my body hates, yes, my gut talks to me, but oftentimes I get really tired. My brain just feels like it's not firing the speed that it should. And might be a little brain foggy, maybe even a little depresso espresso, who's to say? But if that is you, and if your gut is always screaming at you, if you are lactose intolerant, and if you're eating cheese every day, whatever it is, there's certain foods that you can tell don't love you back. And for some reason, you continue to eat them. I don't want you to be scared of food if you don't have to be scared of food, fam. But I want you to listen to your body. And if your gut is clearly telling you, something's not doing well in here, it's going to directly impact your brain. It's going to directly influence things like depression and inflammation in general. Independent of gut. Inflammation in general raises different chemicals in the body called interleukins. They're basically different messengers in the body that stimulate different cellular responses. And interleukin 6, IL-6, is a potent inflammatory trigger that directly influences cognition and brain health and leads to things like depression. And I've actually talked about certain studies on this podcast before that they have found that increases in these compounds that are inflammatory in nature, these cytokines, they can mimic things like depression. So you need to take your inflammation seriously. That might mean that you are changing your lifestyle, your diet, your self-care products. You might be getting an air filter in your house. You might be switching to clean water. All these things I consider foundational for your health because they spill over into every single topic that I could possibly talk about. But with the brain is very sensitive to inflammation. And fun fact for those of you that were told that you are celiac or that you're gluten sensitive and you don't believe your doctor and you're like, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. I'm just gonna keep eating the bread because I'm addicted to it and has gluteomorphin, which is basically morphine, and I'm literally addicted to it. I get it, sis, but like honestly, just like stop. But anyway, if that's you, if you have that tool of information, if you have that knowledge, please don't brush it under the rug, because you know what? If you have those reactions, I think it's something crazy, like 90% of individuals that have that inflammatory reaction in their gut actually show that same level of inflammation in their brain when they eat gluten, if they are gluten sensitive. So I'm not saying everyone, I'm not saying those of you that, don't have a reaction to gluten. Good, I'm so happy for you. But honestly, a lot of you do. And I can't even tell you how many times I'm sitting with a patient. I test all my patients for genetic susceptibility to gluten, because you might not have active celiac disease, but genetically there's something called HLA-DQ2 and HLA-DQ8, and they're basically these proteins that sit on white blood cells and they get activated by gluten. White blood cells are your army, so they're killing things that shouldn't be there, but they're also controlling inflammation, cleaning up shop. So if I see that someone's immune system is triggered by gluten, that is a really beautiful tool for me as their clinician to be able to say, that might be contributing to your headaches, that might be contributing to your joint pain, that might be contributing to X, Y, or Z, so let's cut it out. I have one person in mind right now that I'm thinking of, and I looked at them and I told them this, and they're like, well, I'm not doing that. Okay, it's your body. Trust, fam. I don't give a fuck what you do with your body. The whole reason why I do this podcast is to give you information so that you can heal, so that you can be the best version of yourself, so that you can get to the root of some of these things that maybe your doctor told you was normal. But, it's not my job to heal you. But if you get information that can potentially help you heal, I think you should use it personally. So that's my little gluten spiel. I will move on from that. But inflammation truly does impact brain health significantly, okay? So something else that you can just really look into as far as getting more fuel to your body. Do you eat protein? We know I love protein. We do. I really do love protein. You know who didn't used to love protein? Me. I used to be vegan and I was a hangry bitch all the time. My blood sugar was going up and down. My mental health was a wreck, because protein not only is giving you the building blocks to make neurotransmitters that we're going to get into soon, it's also helping your cells make energy, and it's helping every system in your body feel safe. That's kind of what protein does. It's the structure of the body. So our body likes to feel safe. And if you don't have enough protein, a lot of your brain requires protein to lay down all those new neuroconnective pathways, that neuroplasticity, that is protein. So if you don't have even that building block, everything is going to slow down. And getting into the neurotransmitter piece, if you are depressed or if you are anxious or X, Y, or Z mental health wise, and if you are protein deficient, that is directly going to influence everything in your body. So, serotonin is made from tryptophan. That's an amino acid, and it gets converted down the line. And that is a highly iron dependent pathway. Dopamine, to make dopamine, you actually make that from phenylalanine. It turns into L-tyrosine, and then it just continues down the line. And that is also very dependent on certain B vitamins, like vitamin B6. It also needs vitamin C, it needs iron, it needs minerals. So if you don't even have the starting point, that amino acid, nothing is going to flow well. And I also find, just honestly across the board in my practice, that most of my patients are B6 deficient, and that's why it's such a game changer for mental health. So I would definitely recommend looking into that as well. And B6 in supplements, if you were to look on the back of them, it's probably 2 to 25 milligrams total. When I am using B6 to correct a deficiency, I'm usually around 250 milligrams, fam. So even if you're taking a multivitamin, again, I'm not your doctor, so don't just go taking it. This is something that you need to investigate in your own body to see if you need to take it, but it could be a missing link to your sweet little mental health. Let me tell you that, okay? And those systems in making from that amino acid a neurotransmitter, it requires a lot of energy. It requires also insulin to be stable, because if you're having these big fluctuations in blood sugar and insulin, it actually will not allow those amino acids, because they go into the brain in something called a transporter, this like protein shuttle. It kind of shuts that shuttle down. So even going back to one of the first things I talked about, if your blood sugar is not in check, but also if you're not even getting enough blood flow to your brain, because that's how all of these amino acids, these vitamins and minerals are getting to your brain, everything downstream that I'm telling you isn't necessarily going to matter, right? So those are some big things, but truly I I can't undervalue the wealth that is movement. Truly. If you want to do one thing for your brain that is free, just move your gorgeous body. If you're like, I can't, I'm tired, trust me, it's gonna wake you up a little bit. And it could be any movement that you like, anything at all. I will say that complex movements are more just activating to the brain because they require specific on and off switches of your muscles, but it could be truly anything that you enjoy. But again, I would switch it up. I would try to not do the same thing every day because you want your brain to be challenged in a lot of ways, or in what you're doing movement wise, maybe just try to move in that pattern a little bit differently. So for me, when I do my yoga asana practice, I often do things with my left side first, or I step forward with my left leg first, or step back with it first, because I'm a righty and I typically do everything with the right. So as I spoke to earlier, some signs that your sweet little brain is starting to shut down is, first of all, just feeling depressed, brain foggy, slow, but also you might notice structural changes in your body, because when the brain starts to slow down, what happens is that the flexor muscles in your body start to get hypertonic, which means that they're active. So the flexor muscles are basically everything that would make you go into a little beetle ball. So your neck, your shoulders, your arms. Have you ever seen those people whose arms are kind of like up like this? And they're looking down a little bit? That's a sign that their brain is wanting some love. So of course, physically, you could do some things to strengthen the back of the body, but also that's a sign to me that this brain wants some help. They are on their way to dementia or Parkinson's disease. And I don't know about you, but I hope to have this brain up until the last day of my life. I hope that it fires as fast for the rest of my life. And there's so many things that you could do to make sure that your brain is as healthy as possible. And a lot of what I talked about today, fam, is literally free. It's literally free. Like, it's moving your body. It's not eating foods that you hate. Well, you might like them, but your body is clearly telling you that it hates them. And also just making sure that you are getting all of the nutrients that you need to thrive. You need to also take your stress very seriously, because stress upregulates so many chemicals in your body that kind of just stimulates inflammation and shuts everything down. So have you ever been around a new mom? And you're like, why don't you remember anything? That's because of cortisol. Or have you ever been in a traumatic incident and you're like, I don't remember it. I don't know. I was told I was there, but I don't remember it. It's because when that happens, your body releases so much cortisol. Cortisol swims around your blood and it binds part of your brain where the memory centers live, and it kind of just shuts it down so that you don't remember anything. So if that is you, if you are stressed and if you're like, I can't remember names, I can't remember faces, please go on a vacation. Just kidding. You don't need a full-blown vacation, but just take your stress really seriously. Start to eliminate things that are toxic in your life, whether that's a toxic job, toxic relationship, toxic environment, whatever it is. That will help to significantly reduce your stress and make your body feel like it's safe, because if your brain does not feel as if it is safe, it's not going to fire the way that you want it to. And also, a fun fact, you could do this to work on brain health, or this is something that you could even do to just challenge yourself to see where your brain is at. Have one of your friends tell you 10 different words at the beginning of when you're hanging out. And then at the end of your session, repeat those words back to them. If you can't do that, that's a sign that your brain wants some love. And also, let me say that when I was in medical school, I was nearly convinced that I had dementia. Honestly. What was Ashley in medical school? Ashley was vegan. What else was Ashley in medical school? Living and studying in mold. What else was I? The most stressed I've ever been in my life. Literally, I felt like I was shot out of a cannon every day. I hope to never feel that feeling ever again, but I'm grateful for it because it got me to this point, right? But with that being said, I literally thought I had dementia. I would take cognitive tests and I'm like, I can't remember shit. And no, it wasn't a supplement that got my brain better. It wasn't taking, the newest nootropic or the newest brain boosting bullshit. It was just nourishing my body, decreasing stress, and getting my blood pressure back up, which was directly related to my adrenal glands. And even just anchoring in the point that you need to move your body more and some other things just to create that neuroplasticity. That happens with something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factor. It's something that we make, and it's something that just sprouts our little brain up and turns it online. And you could do that through exercise. You could also do that with sauna. We love both of those things so much. But you know what we love more than both of those things? A happy brain. Yes, we do. Your brain is the walnut. Yes, it is. But it's controlling everything in your body. It's controlling the way that you think, the way that you feel, the way that your immune system works, the way that your gut works. It can prevent things like autoimmune disease, honestly, if there's balance in the brain. It can help you sleep. It can help you be fertile. It can help your gut make pretty poops. So working on your brain health is going to spill over into everything. And a lot of what we talked about today is honestly actionable. It's doable. It just is going to require you to give a fuck about your brain. And don't wait until your penis doesn't work, okay, boys? Do not wait until then to check in on your blood flow. Do not wait until you can't remember your kids' names to start to care about inflammation in your brain. There's so many things that you can do. And again, a lot of it comes down to diet, to lifestyle, to self-care, and to having fun. Having fun and playing, so good for your brain. So those of you that have kids, go play with them, play games, go play sports with them, whatever you need to do. And I hope that your brain has blossomed by this episode and that you're feeling empowered to change your cognition and to change your life from someone that used to be very anemic and with a brain that I don't know if anyone realized that it was slow, but I felt like it was slow. From someone who has been there before, just know that it feels a lot better when the inflammation in your brain goes down and when you finally nourish it. So you got the tools, fam. You got them. Please leave any questions that you have in the comments below because I would love to answer them for you. Let me know what fun games that you try. And also, go ask someone to tell you 10 words and then try to remember them at the end of your session. See if you can do it. Thank you so much for being here. Me and my brain. Thank you.